Hello everybody, my name is Barry Johnson. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. Today I'm going to ask a very simple question. Which money? Hey money, baby! I got my money going on! If you got money to spend today, where are you going to put that money? Should you invest in UAD's plug-in platform? Or should you go with a new M1 Pro MacBook Pro? Let's get to it. Okay. Please, let me get this right out of the gate because I'm already anticipating the comments in the video below because I've experienced it before. If you happen to be a lover, a user, an early adopter, a fan, whatever you want to call it, of Universal Audio's UAD platform and their Apollo series interfaces, please don't get your panties all up in a wad, okay? Just because I pose a question does not mean I'm attacking your decision, your choice, none of those things, okay? I'm offering up something that I think people probably should start to consider if they're now at that stage where they've got hard-earned money and they're looking to spend it. Which direction should they go? What should they think about? Now, I'll also say this. If you're already heavily invested in the UAD platform, whether it's a combination of their plugins, their satellite DSP-based units, as well as their DSP-based interface units, this video is not going to help you that much and because you're already invested into that. But if you're not invested in any of that, this video is for you. It's worthy of consideration. So let's kind of talk about my journey. I've got right here, I don't know if I can pick this up and show it. Oh, I just disconnected my carbon interface, but I'll deal with that in a second. Don't really need it for the case of that. But that's a 14-inch M1 Pro. This here happens to be a 16-inch M1 Pro. And then in the other room, I've got a MacBook Air, M1 MacBook Air that belongs to my son. I recently did a video on that. I don't know if it's come out yet or not. If it's either come out or it's coming out, talking about which one of those three does it make the most sense to invest in if you're investing in the M1 platform. But that's a separate video altogether. But in my journey with this, I quickly learned from just basically the base M1, that MacBook Air, all the way up to the 16-inch M1 Pro, that these little boogers are powerful little suckers when it comes to doing audio. You know, are they the best at everything? No, probably not. But for creatives, if you're in the audio world or you're in the video world, you're editing video, I'm sorry, these things are freaking Mac Daddy. Let me tell you, they are the Mac Daddies out there. And they do that effortlessly. To the point to where I'm going to have another video coming out pretty soon is, do these computers finally, are they the DSP killer where you actually need DSP for low latency? So let's talk about how UAD users use DSP historically as well as today, okay? When UAD first came out, I was an early adopter of UAD, and let me also say this, okay? I'm a fan of their plugins. I think they make great plugins. I'm also a fan of their hardware that they make today. I haven't always been that fan, but the hardware, for the most part, let's say the interfaces, I'm a fan of those today. Okay? I'm not a fan of the fact that they have milked the living freaking daylights out of their DSP chips on their units, okay? They should and could and should be a heck of a lot more powerful than they are. And that's a separate video I've got out there discussing that. So I'm not bashing UAD. They make great products, okay? But let's talk about the history of it. I adopted the first UAD 1 card, DSP cards. Now we're going back into probably the 2000s, somewhere in there. I adopted that because you had to have that card if you wanted to run their plugins. Now, at the time, they could not be touched on the quality of their plugins. They simply couldn't be touched by anybody. And I was on Pro Tools HD TTM at the time, so I'm running all DSP-based plugins already. So it had nothing to do with DSP back then, as far as tracking and things like that went, which you got with Pro Tools HD and again now HDX and so on, and the Carbon. But ultimately, you bought their hardware to be able to use their plugins. First, initially was a PCIe card that went into your tower, your desktop computer. Then later on, they developed a FireWire version. They could do it via FireWire, and then they bumped that up to Thunderbolt. And today, I think they have Thunderbolt and USB-C for their satellite units. I think the PCIe card is, if it hasn't fallen out of the wayside, it's soon to do that, because today you can just do everything via quick connection via cable. So that said, historically, they've made fantastic plugins, and that remains the case today. The quality of UAD's plugins today are very, very, very good, okay? They're also very, 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 very pricey. Now, fans of the UAD platform will say, well, yeah, Barry, you're right, but fairly frequently, at least 2 to 3 times a year, they have some serious promos where you can buy their plugins at a discounted rate. And I think that's great. And then I would argue, even at that discounted rate, they're still expensive by today's standards. If you go back a few years ago, that wasn't the case. But today's standards, they're expensive. Okay, even at half off, they're still expensive, because every other plugin manufacturer discounts theirs too, at a much sharper discount than UAD does. The challenge that I have with UAD is it requires, if you really want to be able to get into that platform and use their plugins exclusively, you have to buy a ton of DSP-based units. There's no way you're going to get that done with just the DSP cards and one of the Apollo units. I don't care which one you get, you're not going to get it all done with that one. You're going to need additional satellite units or buy additional Apollo units, and that gets expensive as crap, okay? So I would argue that today, with the exception of a handful of UAD plugins, there are plugin manufacturers out there that do just as good a job as UAD at creating their plugins. Whether that's SoftTube, Plugin Alliance, I criticize Waves more than anybody under the sun, but that new SSL plugin they've got came out. It sounds pretty freaking sweet. Okay, it sounds great, and I'll do something on that coming up, comparing and get some other things, but. And today with subscriptions, I know a lot of people hate that term subscription, and in many situations I completely agree. But what Plugin Alliance is doing is off the charts on theirs. You're really not paying for anything, because they give you these vouchers that you can buy their plugins with, basically meaning you're not really paying anything. Or if you are, it's very, very, very little. And I find their plugins to be incredible. I think they're very, very, very good. Are every one of them that way? No. But the vast majority of them, I think a lot of them compete, in my opinion, very heavily against UAD's plugins. Now, so the argument becomes, okay, Barry, if you're agreeing that UAD's plugins still, after all that you've said, there's still quite a few of them that still rise above everything else, and that is what I'm saying, okay? That is true in my humble opinion. I think that the challenge comes from, is it really going to make that much of a difference at the end of the day? And when your song is finally done, it's been properly mastered, and it's out there in whatever streaming platform that you choose to do it, whether that's just streaming it peer-to-peer with a bunch of your friends, or you're going to become rich and famous and the next yada, yada, yada out there in the whole music world, okay? I'm going to argue, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I don't think it's really going to make, I'm going to say this, I don't think it's going to make a daggone bit of difference. And I mean, nada. I'm just flat out saying it. Nada. Are they going to sound better to yours in your studio? Yeah, they are. They are. They're going to sound better and listen to your monitors, so your DAW, the way you've got it set up in your room. Is it going to sound that way probably when you just take that rough mix out to the car? Is it going to sound better? Yeah, they are. By the time it gets listened to on small little speakers or small little earphones or in someone else's car, after it's been mastered, after it's gone through all of the stuff it's got to go through to get prepared for that point, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, okay? So, now, that doesn't mean you still don't go that route, because, I'm big in those, little marginal steps come up, make a big difference. I personally would rather invest in hardware over those expensive UAD plugins, but that's my take. That's just my take on it. Now, I guess this started out being talking about the M1 Pros. I think I just dropped a pic down there, but oh well, I've got plenty. And so what I'm finding incredibly fascinating with these new computers over here is they are fascinatingly freakingly fast, okay? There is no project that I've ever done in my 4 decades plus of doing this, okay? Well, let's certainly talk about since my digital audio workstation days. Let's forget about tape and other things out that before that. There's not a single project I've ever done where I could not keep this at a 32 buffer and record and add as many tracks as I wanted to and do whatever I wanted to and have the feeling of zero latency because I'm able to keep such a low buffer, especially paired up with a fast interface, digital analog converter, analog digital converter, that this wouldn't handle no problem. I mean, no problem. And I've got some sessions I did on TDM back in the day that took, I think, an HD6 to run it. Okay, an HD6, which means I had to have 6 of their DSP cards installed in a combination of in my Mac Pro as well as a Magna external PCIe expansion box. Okay, this piece of cake, no problem. I mean, a piece of cake. There's nothing that I've been able to throw at these things that have, you know, look, it's hard to do just to try to max the things out with things that are just unrealistic, things that you would never do. So when you're looking at the new, like this 14-inch M1 Pro you can get for the entry-level model, I think is $19.99. I think these go up to maybe $200 or $300 more to get the 16-inch model. What you're getting with the 16 over the 14 is longer battery life, a much larger display, and slightly more power, but that's marginal at best. And so when you look at, if I'm going to go out and invest that kind of money, because all you got to do is go out and buy a couple of satellite units, octa-core satellite units, and you're pushing the prices of these. It's not that far off. And you haven't even bought the plugins yet. And so I think the question has to be asked today. Now, I know today UAD seems to try to be making a transition right now. They've got some of their plugins that now via Luna are natively run, which I think is the only way I think they're going to continue to be able to survive. Well, not survive. They'll always survive because they're a great company and they make great products. But to continue to excel and things like that where they become compelling is if they move more of their stuff into the native verse and no longer needing DSP to run it. I mean, look at me. You know, I even bought right here. Here's a Pro Tools Carbon right there, okay? I bought that unit specifically. Now I'm regretting it, to be honest with you. I bought that specifically because I wanted to be able to have DSP at my fingertips. I never wanted to have to worry about latency. I wanted to be able to track anytime I wanted to go and run everything else on the computer. And that's what you have with this. It's the best of both worlds. Your mixture, everything else all runs on the power of your computer. But when you do need to record, you can just plop in and turn it over to DSP and record whatever you want. And it's effortlessly and you don't have to think about it and nothing gets in your way. That's why I bought this. Now that I have, well, one of these is going to go, one's going to stay. But now that I have these, I don't need that. I don't need that. I wish I'd bought the Focusrite red 16 line. That's what I wish I'd bought. Okay, but I didn't. Doesn't mean I can't sell it. I can sell it and buy another one, but those reds are hard to find right now, incredibly hard to find. So I think when you look at this and where you're investing your money, whether or not it's one of the M1, I just use the M1 as an example. You know, Intel just released a very powerful, I forget what they call it, but their new CPU that outperformed, at least in early specs, outperformed the M1 Max. But then again, it's not out yet, and those are just rumors at this point. When you get into desktop, if you look at AMD's fastest desktop CPU out there, I think it sells for like $800 just for the CPU. So when you look at that, the cost of that, you know, they're very powerful. Okay, you can do a lot on a Windows machine. This is not a Windows versus Mac thing. I'm just saying specifically with these and how they work in the audio world, there is nothing you can throw at these at this point where your average user, and I mean your average user, and I mean your average heavy user out there, okay, that it's not going to be able to handle. It's going to be able to handle anything you want and keep your buffer as low as you want, making DSP unnecessary. That's one of the things that UAD did that made it start to be compelling, is when they came out with their Apollo interfaces and made the ability to be able to track through their plugins with zero latency. That was the compelling part. That was one of the ones that really revived UAD, because had they not done that, I'm not so sure people would have stayed with their plugins, just dealing with either satellite units or PCIe cards just to run the plugins. I think they were smart in what they did with their interfaces, and they did that, and they developed a massive popular following with that. And they make great products. I mean, they're very, very, very good. And again, if you're already invested into it, stay there. You're in a great place. You're in a great place. But if you're deciding now, you're an up and coming, you're deciding where you're going to invest your money, I wouldn't do it. I haven't done it. I got rid of all my UAD stuff a couple of years ago, and I would never go back to that platform because I simply don't need it. It's hard for me to justify the cost of utilizing those plugins when today plugin manufacturers like SoftTube, like Plugin Alliance, do a freaking incredible job, okay? And so if you can't get done what you need to get done and produce very, very high quality, high freaking quality audio with using those, if you can't do that, then you've got some work to do. And we all have some work to do, and that's fine, but understand it's not the tool, it's the operator. And that's where you grow your knowledge and you grow your skill set, whether it's through watching guys like me or watching other people out there. There's a wealth of information that we can learn about out there in the YouTube world. So keep that in mind. So I think this is worthy of a discussion. I think it's worthy of a topic. Again, please, if you're a UAD user, don't get all bent out of shape just because I possibly said that somebody else other than you maybe should consider taking a different route if they're on the fence. If they're investigating, they're looking at Sweetwater's website, they're doing all these things, maybe they should consider something different. That's all I'm saying. So everybody take a chill pill now, because I can already see the comments flying. So speaking of comments, I encourage you to put your comments down below in this video. Share with me how you feel, what you think about it. If you want to flat out tell me I'm wrong, then flat out tell me I'm wrong. Just do it respectfully. It drives me nuts when these guys get on there and they just go on the attack mode. I'm like, is that the way you talk to people in real life? I mean, you don't even know me personally, but because I have a different opinion of you, you feel the need to be a keyboard warrior and just attack the living daylights out of my opinion. I mean, come on, dude. Dude or dudette, whatever you are out there. Take a chill pill. Okay, we don't all, the great thing about it, there's no right answer for every one person. There's not. Everybody's got whatever makes you the most creative. That's what and that's what I need to be able to use. And so all we can do is arm ourselves with as much information as possible, okay, so we can make these informed decisions. And that's what a lot of this show is about, helping you make informed decisions. So when you're doing things or trying to learn something, these are the things that I recommend that you consider, okay? So that being said, I also ask that you consider going back and watching some of my other videos. I think you might be surprised. I have them covering the gamut of a lot of different topics of conversation as it relates to the home project studio, okay? Outside of that, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. Come on, I know you can do it, okay? My channel, I've only been at this a little over almost 5 months, not quite 5 months yet. And I've already developed a pretty good following, so I must be doing something right, I guess. But I'd like to keep that going because I'd like to get my stuff out to as many people as possible. I could care less about making a dime doing this. I'm not in this to make money. I could stop doing this in a heartbeat because I got a good day job, but I enjoy doing this, okay? And I'm also long-witted, and here I go, yada, yada, yada. This thing's probably an hour now, and it's time for me to go. So hit like, hit subscribe, hit notification bell. And until then, have yourself a freaking great day, whether or not you're a UAD user, an M1 Pro user, or you got your build-to-order computer that you put together yourself and you're damn proud of it, okay? Get out there and get it done and have a great freaking day.